when I was doing career stuff, it's like we had one 40-minute session in an entire first semester that faculty would teach on career. And they were like, I mean, so many of them are like, I don't know, you go get your PhD and like teach history. I don't know what else you do with a history degree, right? So we're not just going to add a course. We actually are going to come up with a comprehensive and cohesive plan that is not just a check the box. Yes, we have a first year experience. Yes, we are doing this. Yes, we're doing this, but actually fundamentally change the character of college and the character of those educational experiences to better serve the new inputs that we have and the things that are going on.
Rachel.
Hey, how are you?
Great.
Good. I'm so glad that you could join me today.
Thank you for letting me join you today. We've got an exciting cap and gown. We're
For sure.
talking about the conditions for student success. And yeah, I'm your guest today, huh?
I guess. I mean, you're kind of my co-host. So hi all, I'm Rachel Phillips-Buck, VP for Student Success at Ferris Resources, joined by Matt Boisvert, who's our president for Cap and Gown. Happy to see you all joining us. And those of you who will be joining us later in the week through podcasts, don't forget that you can always access this and share it with your colleagues through our taplink.cc/Ferris Resources. So please ask other people to join us and share that with them. We are really excited actually to kick off our fall series about conditions for student success. So this is going to be our introduction to that. And then we are going to be talking about this topic for the next 5 or 6 weeks. I know you guys are having a busy week. So we have move-in days for so many of you. I know athletes are on campus. You're thinking about orientation. Also, the Delta variant is making us crazy. So there's just a lot going on. And as I told you last week, we see you. We know you're doing good work. We're grateful for you to join us. So Matt, let's start with State of the Union.
What is going on in the state of universities, Rachel?
Well, first of all, I would like to call all of those of you who are joining us either on Zoom or through YouTube to Matt's tie dimple. This has been the talk of the office because it is arguably a perfect tie dimple.
It's arguable. Yeah. Well, when you work with Anthony, you know, you got to up your game.
Step up your game a little bit. And this is a different method of tying your tie, correct? It's, what is it called?
This is the Pratt knot. So,
Pratt knot.
Yes.
And it presents this perfect tie dimple. So congratulations. It's lovely. You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
Okay. Another State of the Union. Thought we should get that out of the way. The Delta variant is making us all a little bit crazy. The timing of it is just so difficult because we are scrambling now to try to figure out what's going on, what we're going to do, what the best response to this variant is. So let me just give you, as I have done for the last couple of weeks, a couple of examples of what different schools are doing. In California State University, they announced that they are going to go online for 6 weeks. So that's going to start August 23rd and go all the way through October 1st.
Okay.
Alamo Community College District also announced that they're going to be online for just the first 2 weeks of the fall semester. They also start August 23rd. University of Texas in San Antonio is going to be online for 3 weeks. This is interesting in Pennsylvania, specifically in Philadelphia. Everybody who works or studies at a college or university in Philadelphia has to be vaccinated by mid-October, or you can choose to wear masks while indoors and get tested for COVID-19 at least once a week. So that is coming from the city. That's the mandate that they've put out there. At Pennsylvania State University, the faculty senate passed a resolution on Friday expressing no confidence in the university's COVID plan, which, you know, when faculty vote no confidence, it's a gigantic deal on a campus.
Yeah.
So they wanted for the university to require vaccinations, as many of their peers in the Big Ten have done, but the president said they were not going to do that. And so the faculty submitted a no confidence vote. On the incentive side in Louisiana, the governor is announced a new program, Shot for 100. It's a vaccine incentive program that's going to give $100 to the first 75,000 students who get their COVID vaccine, which is pretty amazing. Mott Community College in Flint, Michigan is offering students in fall 2021 classes, or enrolled in those classes, a $750 tuition credit if they can provide proof of vaccination, which, Matt, we were saying, like, given the expense to care for students who are in quarantine, it's probably a great ROI for that school. And at a community college, $750 is going to be significant, right?
Definitely motivating. And I think incentives matter. And if you do run the numbers on the cost of each student, if you have to quarantine them, and just the overall impact on your campus, they might be right. Around $750 may actually be more. So yeah. One of our schools, McLennan Community College, I just read, they're offering $200 to their students to be vaccinated. So
yeah, I'm curious if you guys are doing incentives, please chat that. I would love to hear about that. On the other side, which this is a little bit much in my opinion, but you guys can tell me I'm crazy. That's fine. I can be wrong. West Virginia Wesleyan College is charging students $750 if they come to campus without proof of vaccination, which is not strange because there's a lot of schools doing this. And what they're saying is that's like for testing. So you've got to pay that amount of money so that we can get you tested. But they also are saying students who are infected with the virus, who will not go home or cannot go home, have to pay $250 to be quarantined on campus after 2 days of free isolation housing. So we're going to house you for 2 days, and then you've got to make arrangements to go home. And if you can't, we're going to charge you this extra $250 for quarantine. So I understand the hope that that would push people to get vaccinated. I understand it's expensive to quarantine students. I just think when we talk about community and about care for our students, that might backfire, because I don't think those students are going to come back.
And also, I would say that gives you an incentive if you're a student to hide the fact that you have COVID. So if you're
I'm not going to report it because you're going to send me home, or I have to pay that money. So there may be some unintended consequences with that one. But like I said, everybody is dealing with that in totally different ways. And you and I are going to talk about this depending on where you are in the country and how big your school is. And, you know, there's a lot that goes into those decisions. So I just feel so frustrated for all of our schools who have had a plan. And then, you know, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, it's kind of getting hoopy chooped, you know.
There it is.
There it is. Okay. Also, we have an article out of Inside Higher Ed about some schools that have had really amazing admissions and enrollment for their classes for this
Coming in this fall.
Yeah. So it was supposed to be like a terrible fall for private colleges. This article makes the distinction, like private colleges who are not fortunate enough to have $1 billion endowment and international reputation. So Harvard, we're looking at you. But there are a lot of schools who have been really successful. Eckerd College in Florida has a record 664 new students this week, up 29% from last week. Last year. They basically are like, the key to attracting students was that we had students on our campus the entire year last year. And so parents are like, we want our students to have a real experience. We're going to send them to you. During the summer, their parents' council sent handwritten notes to every parent of every incoming freshman, which I love. And so so their summer melt was much lower than it has been like 2 years ago before COVID hit. They've created 50 spaces for outdoors classrooms. So they're in Florida, so they have that luxury to be able to do that. And then they also are going test optional for 3 years. So lots of just little things to try to move the needle there. Emory and Henry College, who we love a lot, has a 63% increase in new students in 1 year.
It's amazing.
Wow. They are going to enroll 467 students. Really what they've done is tweak their financial aid strategy to attract more middle-class students. So that's a school that has a really solid track record with lower income students. And then also was attracting some very, very wealthy students, but they were missing kind of the middle of the funnel. So they made some adjustments for that. And obviously have had a great response. So it's an interesting article just about all of these schools. And I would just say the reason I bring it up for our schools is because every school cited is like, hey, we stayed open. We gave a full college experience and our students and our parents were really grateful. So.
And Rachel, I think for me, also knowing about Emory and Henry and the way they connect with parents and guardians, to hear from them about their students. I think the common thread in that is the way that you're connected to parents matters. And especially if you have parents of current students writing future students' parents, that's powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best word of mouth you could get. And being able to convey like, no, we're a great community. It's safe. We're taking all these precautions, but they're
going to be cared for.
Most importantly, we're invested in students.
Yeah, I love that. Related to parents in impact on students, 70% of students say college is unaffordable, which I don't think this is news. Like this, I feel like this has been going on for a very long time. The National Student Clearinghouse Research Center just did another survey. It's 2,000 people. Half of them are students, half of them are parents. But they're saying 70% of prospective and current college students say the price of attending an institution has altered their plans for 2021, 2022. So that's interesting because it's not like a global, it's too expensive. They are talking specifically about this year and thinking about the cost and how that's kind of changing their mind. Remember that the average student loan debt is about $32,000 per student, which, as you and I were talking about this, remember average, because you have some students who have none, and then you have some students who have way more than that.
Double or triple.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. So the National College Attainment Network has shown through its data all the way back to 2014 that many colleges are out of reach, even for our Pell eligible students. And that is pressing forward now, not to just our underserved and low income students, but also affecting those with moderate incomes as well, because college just keeps getting more and more expensive. And so families are finding it really difficult to keep up. And you know, the conversation around dinner tables is, are we going to spend this much money for schools that are not delivering a full experience, right? Do you need to take another year off? What are you going to do? So pretty interesting.
Very.
Okay, my last State of the Union is my favorite. I think it's really exciting. So colleges and universities are launching a cannabis course and program. There's multiple schools who are doing this. So first of all, the Colorado State University Pueblo has a greenhouse full of hemp plants, and their faculty wants you to know that hemp is different than marijuana.
Don't smoke hemp unless you want a headache.
Yes. The faculty is like,
professor
hey,
makes a really big point about that.
Yes,
right?
It does not have THC, which is what the thing that makes you high. So they have a new bachelor's program in cannabis biology and chemistry, launched in 2020. The first cohort was 15 students. Now they have 56 students enrolled for fall. So, wow. Community College of Denver also launched an Associate of Applied Science program in cannabis business. So we have biology, we have chemistry, we have business.
Okay.
They capped it at 20 students. Now they've added 10 more spots. So they have 30 students there. And this is following states that are legalizing cannabis. So like if a state legalizes it, it's more likely, obviously, that their school is going to have a program around it. Syracuse University, which caters to part-time students, is going to partner with a cannabis education company to provide 4 non-credit certificates in cannabis law and policy, business, health, and medicine. So I love the like varied ways that you can invest in this industry.
I mean, it's a brand new industry, like legal industry now.
Yeah.
So
And then one more, Rowan University just opened a new institute for cannabis research, policy, and workforce development. And they're focusing on the science behind the long-term effects of cannabis, social implications of state cannabis policy, and roles in workforce development. So really interesting to see how law changes then open up all of these new possibilities. And you have some schools that are really investing in, all of the different aspects of cannabis. So I don't know how you tell your parents that's what you're going to school for, but you could, I guess, if they were open-minded, right?
Well, I love it in terms of what is something unique about your area, a job market that fits.
Yeah.
As we talk more about just the mentality of college and why you're going to college, I think that makes sense. If you live in Colorado, this is a booming industry there. There's definitely a group of college students who want to learn more about cannabis.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, that is the State of the Union. So let's move on to talk about conditions for student success. And Matt, you and I are introducing this article. Shauna will chat it to you guys so that you can look at it. It actually comes from a speech that Tinto gave in Australia. And it's going to be the basis of what we do for the next couple of weeks as we're starting our new fall series. But can you just introduce Tinto to us and what this article kind of is about?
Sure. So Vincent Tinto, the grandfather of student retention, he was is very passionate about providing access to college, but wanted to make sure it was really clear that if you provide access, but you do not provide support, that is not opportunity. And so in this speech and the article that was just chatted out, he really lays out like there are conditions that an institution really has to invest in order to provide student success. And I love, he's kind of made this move from a retention focus to a broadening out and understanding of student success is beyond just retention. It is the student achieving their goals. And so how are you equipping your students, investing in your students so that they can achieve what their goals are? And in this article, in his speech, he was primarily focused from a faculty standpoint. But when you break it down, it's beyond just lessons for faculty involvement. It's about a holistic approach to a student, every way that you should be investing in student development. And so there's a lot that we can unpack, and we will start off today unpacking. And then as we go through our series, we're going to focus on these different elements or conditions for student success.
I love that quote, access without support is not opportunity, because as you're saying, like his entire goal was everyone should have access to education. It cannot be for this elite, wealthy population. But then to take it one step further and say, if you are giving students access to this, but you are not providing the scaffolding that they need in order to be successful, you have not done them a favor. In fact, Matt, you and I talk all the time about what it means to admit a student that then they take on debt, but they don't graduate, and how it's worse for them to have started and have this debt, but not have a degree at the end of it.
Debilitating.
To be
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tinto, absolutely the godfather of retention, even though we continue to kind of tweak and change the things that he's thinking as we get a better understanding. He's the foundation. And I laughed in this article because he's a little snarky. I know he's not talking about you and me, Matt, but Here's what he said. He said, some institutions even hire consultants who promise a proven formula for successful retention, which I understand what he's trying to say, but I will tell you that there is a formula.
Well, it starts with the relationships, as we talk about relational retention, right?
Yeah, but there is a formula, and the formula is your inputs plus your institutional factors, and your outcome is retention. Retention is the outcome of the mix of those two things. And so, to be clear, it is not easy. And it's not like, oh, now that I know the formula, I can totally increase retention. No, it's a lot of really hard work, but it is true that what you take in, your students and all of their characteristics, plus whatever happens at your institution, whatever that thing is that you do, the mix of your location and how you support students and all of that stuff, that is what impacts retention. And it's why our schools do see an increase in retention, because we work both sides of that. If you think about the success funnel, how do we identify what's true about your students?
Right.
And then how do we connect and solve those problems so that they can be successful and measure those outcomes and then do better every single time? Right. So I know he's not talking to me. I won't take it personally, but there actually is a equation. And I also want to say in that equation that you cannot, on your campus, you can't solve your retention problem and then move on to other things. Because
we've seen that a few times.
Yes, because since it's an equation, every time something changes, you have to be adjusting all of those different pieces, right? So if you change something like your inputs and you say, we're going to start recruiting a whole different kind of student, or even like we're in the middle of COVID, we have a different kind of student that we're recruiting because of what's going on in the world. Yeah. You have to adjust that institutional factors in order to maintain or increase your retention. You can't just say like, okay, it's solved now, we can go on to the next thing.
There was that school, Rachel, you might remember, who they felt okay about their retention rate. I think it was somewhere around 75, 76%. And they felt like they were doing a good job of supporting their conditionally admitted students. And so they cut tutoring services and they thought it was fixed. But when they cut the input or the investment in tutoring services for their students, that did not help them.
Yeah, so if you think of that like a scale, like we have all these academically underprepared students, we're balanced perfectly with who we can support with tutoring. Look, it's perfectly balanced, right? So when you take away tutoring, that's when you're going to see that fall. So I think it's really helpful. There is new language, I think, in the last 10 years about retention. And it's not just something that presidents are thinking about. I think practitioners are thinking about that. But we are going to really talk today about this equation and how you have to manage each of those pieces wisely. And we are going to be talking for most of the following weeks about institutional conditions. So what Tinto is saying is there are things that can be true about your institution that are going to help you support your students. And so these are things that we want to invest in. But because it's an equation, we're going to spend a little bit of our time today talking about your inputs, the students that are coming and what they're bringing with them. Because if you can't identify that, you don't know where to invest in your institutional factors, right?
Absolutely right.
So first of all, let's just acknowledge that the population of students who are going to college, who were going to college before the GI Bill, is a certain population. Then we had the GI Bill go through and we had a whole different population come, right? Then we think about like even short term, Matt, since you and I were in college, you think about all of the technology and online classes. Like, sorry, when we were in school, there was no online classes. That's like that, like they barely heard of chat rooms, when we were in school. Like nobody was doing those kinds of things. So how technology has changed. Did I just date us? Is that what you're frowning at me?
You did.
How technology has changed.
Think of what those courses, the correspondence courses that you would like
mail
off the test and get it back and you'd submit it.
Okay, we're not that old though.
My roommate did that.
Are you serious?
Maybe I'm that old. Go ahead.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Anyway, the population of students in college has changed. And even within the last 18 months, the population of our colleges has changed. Absolutely. I think you were telling me, what were the numbers, Matt, about the number of college students in the United States?
If you think about in 1950, there were 2.66 million college students. And today we have 19.6 million college students. So as 17 more million people are every year going to college, have that access, Well, it's a totally different mix of student who's going to college today than was happening, in 1950. So,
which is exactly what Tinto wanted. That was his entire point, is we've got to get more people who are able to access higher education, but he also has this expectation, then we're going to adjust our institutional factors to be able to support those students. So I think it's interesting because part of what he says in here is like, I'm going to be focusing on institutional factors because student demographic factors are beyond our control, which is absolutely true. Like students are who students are. There's not going to be a thing that we can do to change the fact that our students are first generation students or that our students are, math majors. Like that is what they are.
That's the macro environment, right?
Exactly. However, it is really interesting. You and I have seen this in a lot of different institutions, the effort to control not student demographics, but what kinds of students we are recruiting, right?
Sure.
So, and part of that is about how you talk about your institution. So what promises are you making? We have seen schools that the promise they are making is athletics, and not like Division I athletics. Eventually you're going to be in the draft and you're going to get drafted. But actually I think about Emmanuel College and our friend Kirk that we got to go visit with, and just their commitment to athletics on that campus and the way that they craft their entire community to deliver commitment to those athletes. Can you talk more about
so they're not confused. They know that the majority of their student population are student athletes. But there's also this other piece of it. Well, we don't want them to just come and play a sport. We want them to be an active part of our community. Also, we want them to achieve their goal and get a degree. So not just come for a year or 2 years and then leave. And they do a lot in terms of coaches on recruiting. The coaches are totally tied into keeping the student. So retention is a huge part of their measures of success. It's not just that they're on a team or that they have wins and losses, but that the student stays and achieves a degree. And so there's that, but they also the coaches have a responsibility for how they manage their scholarships so that they can build a successful team that's self-sustaining. And I love that. It's really clear on that campus that the students love it too. And the way that they're a part of not just the athletic community, but also the academic community and a part of the leadership. And so it's just a really neat way that school said, this is who we are, and we're going to invest and commit to those students and in that full development of that student.
Yeah. So they're going to be attractive to an input of students who's like, I want to go for archery, or I want to go for
Rachel, they have bass fishing.
I know.
So it's like, well, what do our students, if we're going to be sports focused, what are some sports?
What do they want to do? Yeah. So you also might have a school. And as I'm listing these, you guys, I would be very curious as you're making sense in your brain about where you work. Is that like a really athletic, like that's what we're promising? You're going to come and play on a team. And that's where kind of the heart of our university is. You also might have a school like Montreat, which Matt, you remember when we visited them years ago, they had just started their cybersecurity major.
Right. And they were one of the first in the country. They definitely were first in the CCCU.
And so they were drawing all of these students who are interested in that. That is a way that they're trying to control their inputs and say, we're going to provide this thing that's going to draw in a certain kind of student, right? Yeah. Also our friend, Dr. Price at Dominican, who is just an amazing, so that school is in Chicago. He works with Chicago public schools and he talks about working upstream. Like, I'm not going to start with them when they're freshmen. I'm going to start when they're juniors and seniors, and we are going to be investing in our community there. Yeah. In high school, we're going to be investing in our community there so that when they come, they are part of this special program that we've created to draw in a certain kind of student. And I love that one because instead of that being like a very selective program, that is a program that meets students where they are in high school and grows them, to your point of student development, develops them into being students who can be successful in college. So I really love that one. So we have athletics, we have career, we have special programs, we have special populations like Michelle and her team at Centenary, who somehow they are so good at supporting their students who need accessibility help. It just like the word is out in all the communities all over the United States. And so if you are a parent of a student who needs some accommodations, you want to send them to Centenary because they do such an awesome job of supporting that population. That's amazing.
I think, again, it circles back to parents. What would a parent say about your institution and that unique population that you serve? In the case of Centenary, the word is out. They are known, and it makes parents feel so good to know that their student will be cared for, that there's this whole program where that's cool. So one thing that Tinto says in this article is stop tinkering around. And so it's like, we're just going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're just going to do all these things on the fringe. Well, when you find success on the fringe, make that a program, like a thing that people are well aware of and that parents want to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this idea of like really committing, Matt, you were saying the idea of commitment, right? Where it's like, we're not going to just say, yeah, whatever, we're going to do this thing, but we are going to be really committed to this population and we're going to invest in them. Lindsay, I didn't see you. Hi, go you. You're doing a great job. Okay. So we do try to control our population a little bit. And I'm going to try very hard not to get on my high horse about this. But first, that's always a bad sign when I say I'm going to try not to get on my high horse about this. But Matt, first, you were telling me about, so thinking about the leader of an institution, the president of an institution, and their perspective on why we do what we do and how that shapes the promise and the message that you're sending to students. Can you tell us about that?
So there's two parts to this. This is Pew Research. And so Pew did a study. They did a study surveying the general population. And then they also studied college presidents to get input on kind of what parents are thinking about college and how they see college. And then also how college presidents, which again, coming back to what is the commitment to these different programs and populations. Obviously, if your college president believes a thing, you would expect there's a greater commitment to that. So in that research, one thing that was really interesting is there was really a true split among college presidents about the reason for college. And so they were asked, what is college meant to do? What is college designed to provide? And so 50%, half of the college presidents, and this is out of 1,000 and something presidents, they said, college is meant to mature and grow students intellectually. And so that's half. So if you think about, well, what would my college president say? Would they agree with that? It's to mature and grow students intellectually. Or 48% who answered it is to provide skill, knowledge, and training to help students succeed in the working world. And so if you think about that, like, is it to grow intellectually and mature, or is it more of this focus on the outcome, the career? I think that's really interesting to think about, because then based on what they're saying, you would hope there's evidence of that belief, right? That they would then start investing in that thing, that have either incredible career development programs and alumni connections, or on the other side, they would have learning communities. They would have a lot of things that are investing in that maturity and intellectual growth.
And that message is going to attract totally different groups of students, right?
Right. Absolutely. And so what's really interesting is when you look at what parents had to say, 39% of parents said college is meant to mature and grow students intellectually. The same 48% of parents said it was for the career outcome. So what I think is interesting about that is you then have parents who are sending their kids to college. And I think this affects the input side, right? So as parents are talking to their kids about school and whether or not it's affordable and which school to pick, there's going to be an alignment with the school that fits that mindset. Is it for jobs and to succeed in the working world, or is it for that maturity and growth intellectually?
Yeah, absolutely. So related, this idea of the institutional factors being the black box, so that we have these students who are going to come to our institution and then we do something with them and then we have this output. And I'm always telling schools to invest in the students that you have, because of course, there are groups of students who are easier to teach. There are groups of students who we would say, well, they just come and Dr. Sherry Woosley was really, so she's just written a book on this idea, or a chapter in a book about this idea of sense of belonging.
Right.
And one of the things Tinto says is we want students to integrate into our community. Okay, well, she's calling into question this idea that they should come and just figure out the rules and get with the program, right? There are students who are going to do that, but there are also students who come and say, like, I don't really know where I fit here. That is more work. It is more work to help students understand their place in your institution if they're first generation and they don't understand the language, right? Or they're very price conscious. And so it's very scary for them to be taking out these loans. Those students absolutely are more work, but there are more of them. So if you are not at 9% selectivity, then you better figure out who the students are that you have. And your job is to serve them in the best way that you can, as opposed to being like, hey, admissions, can you get us more students who have a higher ACT or this or this? And Matt, you and I have worked with some very small schools that have very homogeneous populations, very high at-risk populations, but they're generally the same. I love those schools,
right?
Because instead of saying, like, can we get different students? Nope, you can't. These are the students you have. So you better be an expert in how you are going to support these students. If you admitted them, you better have a clear plan for how you're going to help them be successful. And I love that model.
I love it because you can really, you make it your craft. I want to fully understand this population. And going back to what we said earlier about commitment, we're going to invest everything so that we can not just admit them and collect their tuition for the first year, but we know that we're going to lose half of them. No, we're going to become experts. We're going to make it our craft. We're going to invest in them and even their parents so that they understand how they fit, not only in this community, but how this community is going to help them in that transition into the working world.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I would like to just acknowledge, and that is the difficulty that so many of you have, because you would love to become experts in your population, except it changes frequently. And so this is why we start with this equation, right? Because it's like you admit this group of students. And so I'm going to get very good. Managing deciding students is one of my favorite things. Like, I'm very good at helping deciding students. Well, if my institution decided to double my number, I would be in really big trouble. Or if they decided to stop recruiting deciding students and say, everybody has to pick a major. Now, all of a sudden, I don't know how to do that. So that input changes often. And it can be very frustrating when you are trying to get really good at supporting your group of students for every year, your inputs to be really different.
Well, and I know that there's a lot of stress this year because, if we're being honest, although you had a great article, some schools that have had a lot of success in enrollment growth, a lot of us are stressed, and the enrollment team is very stressed trying to make, even right now, as we're dealing with moving in day, already they're just trying to make a class so that the school can meet the budgetary needs that they have. And one way that enrollment's doing that is changing that input, as you said. What's scary about that is that unless you have a great partnership with enrollment management, where they're telling you, hey, this is how the input is changing, it can be a very scary first couple of months, and even kind of hanging on for how was our fall to spring persistence rate, right?
Yeah.
I have this is just cautionary. We heard feedback from one of our clients about this, where prior to coming over to Ferris, they were using their SIS retention system. And I'll just kind of summarize the feedback that we got from from him about their school. And because I think it is, I don't know, it's depressing to me to hear this is not just happening at their school, it's happening in a lot of schools. So they were using their SIS retention module, and they also, and it was going fine, but then they also hired a new marketing group, a digital marketing company that just got the word out about their school and really flooded the funnel. Well, what it led to was record enrollment. Everyone on day one, they had a party, record enrollment. But very quickly, what they found was that input was so different than their typical population that they had also a record attrition rate. And very quickly, all of their models were built, financial models were built on this incoming class, and it was going to be incredible. And then they just started seeing that melt. It was a real disaster. But what happened in that rapid change of input is they had a predictive model that was built into their SIS system that didn't pick up, it literally picked up 0 at-risk students out of this incoming class. And yeah, and so there was no predictive risk. It led to the dean of students was having to do everything manually. And then they found out that, that what he says at the end was, it wasn't until the very end when we called and we said, hey, this isn't working. And they said, well, we'll come fix that for an exorbitant amount of money.
The SIS did.
Yeah. And give you a tune-up. And that's when he said, that's when we realized we didn't have a retention partner. We were simply working with a vendor. And I would add to that, they also didn't have an enrollment partner. They just had an enrollment vendor, someone who was just loading the top of their funnel. So all of that to say that input is critical in the equation, and understanding where you are right now, even as you're moving students in onto your campus. Can your enrollment team give you the clarity of, hey, we have a higher at-risk population. Here's what those groups look like. Here's where the res halls are moving into, so that we can right now start equipping our staff on that.
Yeah, I think what's really helpful about that story is thinking about the communication. And, whenever we talk to schools, I ask them, what is their capacity to serve an at-risk population? So if you're managing deciding students, how many students can you serve?
Yeah.
If you're managing academic recovery, how many students can you serve? Academically underprepared, what is your capacity to serve? And the lack of communication, where you would have enrollment management saying, like, we recruited 200 students who have an ACT of whatever, a low ACT. So, and then I'm a practitioner and I'm like, I cannot serve 200 students. I can serve 50. That's kind of where we've got to cap that. Yeah. And so the communication between, look, I got you a huge class and we have no way to be able to serve them, right, is where we have that breakdown. And that's why you have to think of it like scales or like an equation for retention. Okay, I'm kind of sick of COVID side notes, but I have a COVID side note about this issue of inputs. Please remember that your students are coming to you right now in the fall with success debt. So we are always talking about success debt in terms of, like, they come fresh for the fall and you have freshmen and they're there. And if they miss one class and you catch them quickly, you help them to recover. Whereas if they miss 4 classes, they're laden with some debt and it's going to be harder to recover. 8 classes, even harder. Well, there's a lot of evidence that your students are not coming fresh. They are not coming without success debt. They actually are anticipating a lot of difficulty. And so just thinking through that population and what they're coming at the very beginning of the semester with. Matt, you have some statistics.
Yeah. So this is an article. It's on Inside Higher Ed. I think it just came out today. Most incoming freshmen are mentally exhausted. Now, this comes from the BESI, the Beginning College Student Survey of Student Engagement, and that's over 35,000 incoming college students have taken this already. So this is between this past May up to now, August. It's still ongoing. But Rachel, 53% of first-year students reported a substantial increase in mental and emotional exhaustion. Yeah. So talk about coming to your campus already with success debt. And I imagine if you're in the middle of orientation week or welcome week, move in, you're seeing it already, not only on the students' faces, but also the parents, just
For sure.
mentally exhausted.
Can
And
we
so,
just apply that to all of
yeah,
the population?
yeah. I
To
mean,
be fair, we are all in that place.
I just came back from vacation and I'm still, so here's the thing, of those 53% who say that they're mentally exhausted, 70% of those students indicated high expectations of academic difficulty. That's compared to the 42% of the peers who said they did not experience greater exhaustion. So not only is more than half of your campus incoming first year students showing signs of mental exhaustion, they're already expecting it's going to be a difficult year. And also in this, 30% of students surveyed reported increased depression. 27% said that they experienced greater loneliness, and 20% felt more hopeless. And I just, this is where I just want to go and be a positive, a bright light for these students as they come onto campus, because
Yeah. In fact, you and I were talking about this crazy idea. We have the luxury to do this because we're not welcoming students on our campus right now. But we were saying, like, wow, wouldn't it be so amazing for our campus to say, for the first 4 weeks, like, you guys are in classes, but we're going to take the first 4 weeks to not focus on academics, to just focus on community, to being together, to be saying what's going on with you. We're going to spend time. We're going to have community events. We're going to not spend the first 3 weeks online, but just spend the first couple of weeks saying we want to be together and just kind of heal from a lot of the stuff that's been going on as we've been separate from a community. So I know there's a lot of difficulties with that, but that idea of how do we connect in community, I think is really important.
I mean, I would say even if we could just have 1 week beyond welcome week and orientation, because there's a lot going on and a lot of times your parents are there and they're adding to the stress. And as we're trying to develop them and let them grow, in maturity. Okay, so hey, can we just take 1 week in the accounting class to not talk about accounting and to just talk about, hey, this is.
Yeah, I don't even know if we have to talk about anything. Like, let's just be together and enjoy each other's
know each other. I just think so much of especially for our schools that we serve, a big part of the promise is community.
Yeah.
And so just taking time to say, hey, not only do I want to get to know you as your professor, but I want you to get to know your peers, because we just went through 20 months of staying away from each other,
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so that's your crash course on inputs. I feel like we did a good job. I didn't get too preachy about that. Teach and serve the students that you have. But we are going to spend most of the beginning of this fall semester talking about institutional factors and conditions. So I just want to kind of define that for us so that we can then dive into each of the things that Tinto talks about over the next couple of weeks. Institutional factors, some of them are static, like your location. So if you are in a town of 100,000 people and you're in West Texas, that is true about you, and that's going to be static, and that's just an institutional factor that you have to adjust to, right? So when a Yankee comes to your school, she's going to be like, what on earth is going on? I don't understand why everyone's holding the door for me, right? That's just static, and that's just location. Some of those institutional factors are not under your control. So if you think about what's happened with COVID and how you had to wear masks, or you had people in quarantine, or like the context of the world, what is going on, those are institutional factors that you do not have control over, right? Things like we have a history. Here's where we came from. Here's who founded us and where they founded us and where we came from. You don't have control over those things. Those things are just true, but they are counted as institutional factors. And then you do have some institutional factors that you are in charge of. Things like whether or not you are going to do hybrid classes or you're going to do online classes. Things like, are you going to offer this major or this major? Are you going to do Greek life? Do you have community rules? Those are the kinds of things that you really are in charge of. And so how do we offer tutoring? So some schools are like, we're going to decentralize tutoring and every department is going to be in charge of that. Some schools have a tutoring center. those institutional factors are part of what happens in that black box that contributes to the success of a student. And so if you think about a school that has 9% selectivity, they do something in their black box and their retention is 97%. Well, I don't know what they did in their black box, but they didn't mess anything up. That's the good news.
They did no harm.
They did no harm because they had the selective class and they all graduated. Big surprise, right? Versus the schools that I love that are not super selective, but whatever they are doing in those institutional factors, they are graduating, they have a high retention and high graduation rate, which means that they impacted those students positively and helped them to be able to be more successful than we would expect if we just looked at that input. So institutional factors are incredibly important. And one of the things that Tinto says is that we have not had the opportunity to fundamentally change the character of college and change the character of the educational experience. And so he wrote this, 10 or 15 years ago. What I'm excited about, so let me go back. His argument is that as we have different inputs, if we are not fundamentally changing the character of college and the character of our educational experience, we will never see an increase in retention and student success because we're trying we're not addressing both sides of the equation, right? Inputs have changed, but we're just going to keep doing the same thing that we're doing. What I'm excited about is that COVID has given us this opportunity to fundamentally change the character of college.
I mean, it is the essence of what we have talked about with Kintsugi, right? So out of this brokenness, we can bring something back that's better. It's more beautiful. It's more connected with the students who we're now serving.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have some great evidence of that coming from presidents, which made me really excited because, in higher education, so often we just keep doing what we're doing. And so the catastrophic brokenness that has come out of COVID, although it has been very, very difficult, has moved a service industry and a technology in a way that it would not normally ever have just said, hey, I think I'm going to move, right?
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about what the president?
So there was a different survey with college presidents, and this is the 2021 survey of college and university presidents via Inside Higher Ed again. But I love this. The question was, which of the following outcomes most closely reflect your view of how your institution will respond to the COVID-19 pandemic and economic recession? So 418 college presidents responded. Now, so here are the choices, or I'll just break it down. Out of that question, what outcome most closely reflects your view of how you'll respond? 3% agreed with shrink the institution. My institution should use this period to tighten its focus, to come out of the recession smaller but better. So 3% said that. 20% said we're using this to return back to normal. But where it gets exciting is the next two. So 34% said we're using this to reset the institution and get ready for growth. So we're going to invest and grow in the areas that we're best at. And so 34%, we're going to use this to reset for growth. And 44% of college presidents said, we're going to use this period to transform our institution. I love that. The response was, my institution should use this period to make difficult but transformative change in its core structure and operations to better position itself for long-term sustainability. And that is what Tinto was hoping for, right? That there would, again, stop tinkering. We need to step back and really craft our institution to confront what the new reality is for college and students.
And not do what so many institutions do, which he calls add a course response, which I love, which is like, oh, we need to think about career. Okay, add a course on that.
Right.
Oh, we need to think about diversity, add a course on that. What he's saying is and actually worse than that, which you guys know, first year experience class, holy moly, all the stuff that we're trying to pack in there, it's not add a course. It's when I was doing career stuff, it's like we had one 40-minute session in an entire first semester that faculty would teach on career. And they were like, so many of them are like, I don't know, you go get your PhD and like teach history. I don't know what else you do with a history degree, right? So we're not just going to add a course. We actually are going to come up with a comprehensive and cohesive plan that is not just a check the box. Yes, we have a first year experience. Yes, we are doing this. Yes, we're doing this, but actually fundamentally change the character of college and the character of those educational experiences to better serve the new inputs that we have and the things that are going on. So I love that. I get super excited about it. Okay, so I'm not going to talk very much about these, but I do want to list them for you. The conditions that Tinto talks about are commitment to increase student success and retention, expectations, high expectations for our students, support for our students, giving our students feedback, making sure that we are allowing our students to be involved, and then talking specifically about how they are learning. I love, he says, we need to stop asking ourselves, how should we teach our students, and start asking ourselves, how can we help them learn? Which I always love, because changing the perspective from what I'm doing to what they need is always the right thing to do, right? How should I do this thing versus what do they need in order to learn? I love it. So we're going to be breaking down each of those and talking one session about all of them. I do, however, it's going to be really, I'm very excited about it. I do, however, want to give you action items today, because I know that without action items, sometimes it's like, oh, there's a lot to think about there, but then what am I supposed to do? So I want to challenge you to think about who your institution serves. And you should be able to make a list of who those students are. We primarily serve students from West Virginia. We primarily serve nursing students. We primarily serve first generation students. Whatever those things are. And if you don't know who you primarily serve and who is most at risk, you have to find out, because again, in our student success funnel, the very first thing is identify. And I will brag on Viva and Matt, who deliver our Spark service, where they go in and assign an analyst to a school and they look at all of these characteristics and they are drilling down. They're not saying here's 400 students who are at risk. They're saying here's a group of 25 or 50 students that you have to invest in because they have these at-risk characteristics. If you don't know who your most at-risk students are, you have to figure that out, because otherwise, especially with our reduced resources, we don't have the opportunity to adjust our institutional factors to serve that group of students that we've identified.
And
so
if you're winging it on anecdotal, you're going to be shocked at who the most at risk is.
In fact, Matt, one of my most favorite thing that happened in our Spark meetings is when a school is like, oh, well, we know this group is at risk. And Viva is like, no, it seems like that group is at risk, but it's actually this thing that's kind of double loading in that. So if we take out what you think, we can actually drill down to a more precise population. So I want you to write down who you're serving, what the most at-risk characteristics are on one side of your page. And on the other side of the page, I want you to think about your institutional factors and the ways that you are supporting those at-risk students. So if you think about, we are primarily supporting Pell Grant recipients, students who are low income, who are going to be price conscious, then what are you doing with your tuition? How are you giving them financial aid and grants? And how are you talking to them about how they're going to pay? That would be a straight line. Here's the input. Here's how we've aligned our institutional factors, right? We have a lot of students that are lower SAT. That's our highest at risk. Great. How are you drawing a straight line from that input factor to your investment in tutoring? Everybody has to go to tutoring. Yeah. And here's what we're going to do to make sure that they can be supported. So for all of those at-risk characteristics, you should be able to draw a line and say, this is the program, or these are the things that we're investing in to support them. And if you find a group that has an at-risk characteristic and there's nothing on the right side of your page, that is a place that we have to figure out how to get that communication between who you're admitting and how you're helping them. We got to get that worked out, because you can't improve retention if you have at-risk characteristics with a straight line and a black hole. It will never work. So that is my action item for you guys. And I think it will be really helpful as we go through the next couple of weeks to just have that kind of list in your head to know where you need to pay closer attention to.
Well, I love that, Rachel. So identifying who you serve, who's most at risk. And then what I love at the end, again, looking at our student success funnel, the measurement part. If you start resourcing these high at risk populations that you've never resourced before, you're going to start to see that improvement in your retention. And that's going to be really fun to take to your president and enrollment management and say, hey, keep funding me. We can do this. This is something we can craft an excellent program and be great at. So
absolutely. Okay, guys, that you did a good job. You stuck with us. That was your crash course on the retention equation: inputs plus institutional factors equals retention and student success. So we're going to be talking a lot about that. Like I said, I know this is a super busy week for so many of you. We are thinking about you. If there's anything that we can do to be helpful to you, please let us know. But I know there's so many moving parts right now. So we are wishing you the best. And we will talk to you again next week. Thanks for joining us for Cap and Gown.
thanks, Rachel. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.